This video is going to discuss China and why I believe that it's going to surpass the United States and the rest of the Western world in the near future due to its rapid developments in the fields of artificial intelligence and biotechnology. But more specifically, I'm going to focus on why China is so successful in these fields and correspondingly what's holding back the Western world. So, we're going to start by discussing artificial intelligence. I expect most of the viewers of this to already have some understanding of what AI is, and particularly what it's useful for, more so than the technicalities of it. In short, artificial intelligence has a wide array of applications, but in short, it's very much, it lays in pattern recognition and can very much augment the abilities that humans already have. From a global competitive standpoint, we're going to be looking at military weapons here, so assisted targeting technologies, advanced rocket capabilities. It would eliminate much of the need for humans to be manually involved with military systems. So the US, of course, that's a main concern. China strengthening its military capabilities with AI. Second, there's automation and efficiency. Artificial intelligence, one of its first uses was with machine learning, specifically with robots and automation processes. If you just think of factories, any kind of sorting process, manufacturing processes that are repetitive for humans, the wage laborers who would have one task to do constantly over and over, that's very easy for a machine or computer to do. So that is another field that AI is rapidly developing in China. Of course, when you can do that, you eliminate the need for humans, you eliminate the limitations that come with humans being these laborers. Machines and computers, they don't need to sleep, they don't need food, they don't complain, you don't need to pay them, they're very reliable. And in general, pattern recognition that comes with artificial intelligence can be used to do almost anything. Of course, you think of shopping online and recommendations that come up with it. That's one type of artificial intelligence, but there are all sorts of fields that can be applied in, cancer recognition, anything you can think of that would require a level of analysis that can all be replicated by computer programs, deep learning, and neural networks, as basically they're very efficient at recognizing patterns more so than most humans. So we now know, why artificial intelligence is such a important thing in this modern day era. Any country that can possess its highest capacities it's going to have the comparative advantage competing with other countries. And right now China is very competitive with America in that regard. When we think about AI, there are technicalities with it that I wouldn't expect the average person to understand, but in short, the way it works is AI requires a large amount of data to be successful. On one end, if you think of a input-output, on your input you have a large amount of data. To simplify it, let's say you're trying to make a computer program to recognize images and label those images. So say we're talking about a crayon. You'll have, on the input, you'll have hundreds of pictures of crayons of different colors, different brands, different orientations, different backgrounds, etc. You'll have a large amount of those pictures that's going to be your input data. It's training data. That goes into your program, and the model basically trains off of that. And on the output, it's going to basically take all the pictures you gave, and it's going to manually give its labeling of said pictures. It will, at first, it's going to be very inaccurate in labeling. Say if you're trying to have it recognize crayons from markers from pens, it's going to, at first, inaccurately label pens as crayons and so forth. You then take the output training data that it's already incorrectly labeled. A human will manually correct that, and it will be replaced and put back into the input again. And basically, this happens many times, and each time the human will correct it until where the program can recognize its mistakes, and it can now accurately label each picture, depending on how efficient it is, to a very high degree of accuracy, 99% even. But to do this, it requires a large amount of data. Now, with China has, of course, the biggest population on this planet, but more significantly, they have 3 times the number of phone users that America does. And even more so significant, they have 50 times as many mobile phone payments on average, transactions that people make. This is all collected by the government. And this is going to be another important point. While America and the Western world greatly values the privacy of users in the global age, in the modern age, China does not. It's a collectivist society. People are willing to sacrifice their privacy and freedoms in return for security and efficiency. So now you have the country with the biggest population, with probably the highest number of mobile data, people with the highest number of cell phones, and just who make the most amount of mobile transactions. This data is then collected by the central government, and it is then used as the input data of the aforementioned AI models. So the AI are now able to train off of unfathomable amount of input data collected by citizens, and it's not made up, it's accurate. It's not a sample set, it is the actual data directly from the source. So because of that, they can now develop their software that's much more accurate at doing what it needs to do than the Western counterparts. Of course, in America, if you think about the recent Facebook scandal, that is not allowed. Companies cannot collect people's data like that without consent, and because of it, it makes it a lot more difficult for big-scale companies here to replicate the success of the Chinese counterparts. And this brings me to my next point with these big data companies. In the West, we have Google, Apple, Facebook, social network sites in general, and these are all separate capitalist entities. They're not linked to the government for the most part. They're competing amongst one another. China, it's a little different. All companies, basically the Communist Party has control over most of the tech companies, or at least very close relations with them. And they often promote them in this field of AI, where if their success, the party guarantees that if they are successful, they will allow them and help them expand out of China and help them make more profit, so to speak. So while the companies in the U.S. are independent actors, China, it's a collectivist society, and the Communist Party has a very strong grip over all of the tech companies and so forth. My next point in why I believe China is going to surpass the U.S. comes down to education, and not just of the common people, but the people actually in the positions of power. If you take a look at Xi Jinping, there was an article, and all these are cited in the description, where it showed him in his office space, and behind him on the bookshelves were a few books relating to artificial intelligence on the topic of very in-depth technical books that the average person would not understand unless they had a background in computer science and math. And Xi Jinping, these were in his personal collection. We can only assume that he understands more so than any other political leader how AI actually works. He understands the technicalities of it, and he's able to better implement it into his ruling, into his political methods. On the contrary, in the West, in the United States, you have congressmen who struggle to use a smartphone. The image that comes to mind was during when Mark Zuckerberg of Facebook was questioned on Capitol Hill. One of the senators asked a very just idiotic question. I think it was something about why he didn't understand that iPhone was not made by Facebook, something along the side. Anyway, a question that no person running this country should be asking. And it just shows the strong contrast, because in China, to join the Chinese party, the Communist Party, the examinations to get through, the education requirements are very strict, and I'd very much compare them to the bureaucracies of ancient China, when scholars literally lived each day to study in hopes of getting into the bureaucracy of the empires. It's still very much a continuation of that today. In the U.S., people are elected by popular vote for the most part, and education requirements aren't needed. So you have people running this country who don't understand technology and definitely do not understand the implications of artificial intelligence. So that to me is a strong standout. And then you have the just general education. I think most people will agree that the Chinese education system is a lot more rigorous than that of the U.S., specifically in the areas of math and science. Many of these Western companies, Google and such, they depend on these on immigrants, on students from East Asian countries to implement their AI systems. The U.S., they just cannot compete on the same level. And so there is a disparity, a very strong disparity in education. Now, my final point here on why I believe China will surpass the Western world very soon. Everything else I've said so far, I've basically regurgitated from various articles, again, all linked to the description, but this last point is basically my opinion. China does not possess ethics in the way the Western world does, and they most certainly, if there are ethics, they do not allow it to hinder their progress in biotechnology and in AI development. The questions of what if, they simply do not exist. It's a completely different culture over there. It's all about efficiency, all about what works. Question of our AI takeover and nonsense like that. It's not a concern. I think back to, in the fields of biotechnology especially, China actually does possess the capabilities to clone humans in their facilities. Could be happening right now. Probably the closest we have to that confirmed are the CRISPR babies. This was fairly recent news where the scientists managed to modify the embryos of two human twins so that they would have a resistance to HIV. That would have not flown here in the United States or in the Western world. But because China does not care, they've gone ahead with it, and they're making the leaps and bounds that the West is missing out on. I also think back to a year and a half ago, maybe, when the Italian neurosurgeon wanted to do the first head transplant, but was not permitted to in Italy. So China allowed him in, and along with another Chinese doctor, was allowed to go ahead with the preliminary stages of that operation. Whether or not it's going to work out, I can't say. But China, they're going full out, 100%. The U.S., unless it gets over its limitations with bioethics and such, it's going to be left in the dust. And China is going to surpass the Western world in AI development and biotechnology. And with those new technologies, it's going to render the Western world irrelevant. We can go into all the details in another video. I think anybody with reasoning ability can see why that is. Just the military powers, the economic changes this will bring as wage laborers are no longer needed and factories can work around the clock. Ultimately, it comes down to money, and the Chinese are very efficient at their manufacturing processes. We're at the point now where China is no longer just a copycat, violating U.S. patents. We're at the point where they are innovating now and implementing said technologies. The U.S. is going to have to make some serious changes if they want to stay relevant in the 22nd century and the later half of the 21st.
You think you can take whatever you want? Things you didn't make? Didn't earn? Things you don't even understand? You don't deserve to have this art or Lothal.
Who deserves what is irrelevant. What matters is who has power. But that is something that yet I won't teach you, so I'll take you to someone who will.